Hey girl.
How you doing?
I'm good. I am good. I would like to decree this day, November 1st, right?
It is.
I would like to decree this day the best day of autumn is today, 2024, November 1st. This is peak autumn day for me, where I am in my little part of the world.
Aw.
What about you?
Yes, it is beautiful. We drove early to vote, and that was a good thing to get out of the way. Now I can honestly, well, I was already not listening to the news, but that was just a good thing to get out of the way. And we were like, is this peak? I think this is peak. This looks like peak, like old people do when they're driving someplace. Uh,
Be-
Jeff and
Were you
I.
were you thinking you were thinking that today?
Yeah, I was thinking it might be today. It was, lots of leaves gone, but so many bright colors. It was beautiful.
Okay, so I had this feeling from the moment I left the house this morning at 7 a.m. to go for my walk, and it just washed over me. And then I thought, why? What is making me think that? Because there's been a lot of color and all of this stuff. And honestly, I'm in this tulip poplar forest, or woodland back here, and a lot of the leaves are gone. So what is it that made that? And I thought, if you were going to ask me,
Oh, I will. Let me ask you.
I would say that it's got to be this beautiful balance between a large amount of color that's there, that's still being held by trees, that's really that like the real anthocyanins, is it? The
Yeah, those things that they talk about. Yeah. Hmm.
those are really starting to come to the fore, and the yellows are strong, but there's still a lot of green. And so you have that stark contrast between these two things. So I still have some ferns that are green. Well, there's tons that's still green out there, but it's providing this incredible contrast. And then you add sort of a warmish, breezy day where you can really enjoy it. And wow.
It's a mix. Wait, what's the name of our podcast?
It's garden mixer. You see, it's meant to be.
It's meant to
It's meant
be.
to be. So what are you drinking?
This is the garden mixer, and we're mixing fall colors. We're mixing. I took your cue from last week, and because it was so warm, I went gin and tonic. I think I killed one of those big old bottles of Hendrix. I mean, I poured the proper amount, but it just happened to be the dregs. And here it is. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm on the same. I'm drinking it from the glasses that my mother used to pour my dad a gin and tonic in the evening. Nice tall, frosted.
How is your mama? You went to see her.
No, I'm going to see her next week. And I actually am hoping to see a couple other things while I'm there, which will remain nameless in California. A couple different gardens there, but we'll see.
Why are you being so private? Are they just so good, and you don't want to make people envious?
Yeah, I have to throw off my stalkers.
They're pounding at the gate.
I'll tell you about that. I'll tell you about them later. But yes, I'm looking forward to that. I'm trying to wrap up the tropicals right now, getting the rest of them in. I had to make a grand decision about the bananas this year, and I have decided to go for death.
It's a choice. It's a choice.
Um, I think, however, I'm going to keep one because it's always nice to have one architectural specimen in your back pocket, so to speak. And if I don't want to use it, I won't. But it's nice to have that to get started. Otherwise, we're just going to start from scratch next year. They grow very quickly. And of course, I'm sorry, listeners, I am talking about the red Abyssinian banana, not just some of the other mousses that I have. This is Enseti, Ventricosa morellii, the red Abyssinian banana.
That will not survive the winter, even with global warming.
Will not survive. It's, I think, a zone 10, and you can't even wrap this baby in my climate and
Mhm.
hope for good things. On Instagram, John Grimshaw commented on my thing. He's at the Yorkshire Arboretum, and actually, I think he's just retired.
Oh,
But he said, "Eat it, eat that corn." And well,
really?
NSETI is actually a very strong supplement, not supplement, it is a major part of the diet in Somalia and Ethiopia
Oh.
in East Africa, and it's cultivated for that corm and then that inside of the pseudostem, which is the trunk. We think of as the trunk, and it's technically a pseudostem.
Mhm.
And seti does not pup. And
Oh, so how do you propagate?
well, you propagate through seeds,
Oh,
and you can. I mean, you can propagate them through by damaging that trunk and that corm, and they will start to sprout. And that happened to me this year for the very first time, actually. I hadn't done this before. And I've got all these tiny little baby pups that are not the same, that they don't pup the same way that Musa does. Musa sort of sends those pups out, definitely separate plants.
mhm. And you think, oh, I'll just slide my shovel right in here and hand this to my friend. No, it's really hard to dig those out.
Yeah, it's not easy, but they don't pose a problem mentally for you going, now is that a separate plant? It's a separate plant, right? The Enseti, it's like I don't want to leave mama. I don't want to leave mama.
Very clingy.
So I was basically carving them out
Oh.
with a little bit of corm on them. And some of them had maybe one or two roots, a couple didn't. I potted up about eight and made notes about how which ones are got a little bit of root, some have got corm, some have got hardly anything, and we'll see how it goes. I'm sort of interested.
And the greenhouse all winter or the garage or
That's the issue.
oh.
Right now they're in the greenhouse and they're quite happy. It's warm in there. They're going to need some light. They can't go into dark. They're going to need some warmth. I got to figure that one out. I think the reality is in about 2 months' time, I will be sharing space with them up here in my office, which is quite sunny.
And Michael doesn't walk in and say, "What? What is happening here?"
What are you doing? But interesting experiment in any case, and it made me feel better about letting the others go. But I'll keep
Yeah.
one of the big ones and we'll move on. But again, that's the premise of my last book is it's different every year.
Yeah.
And it should be different every year.
I took the big step on the Brugmansia.
Okay. And killed it or
No, yeah, that was a choice. I realized I might have. I think I did a fine job with it. I pulled it out of that big pot. I heaved it up the hill. They're fairly shallow rooted. That huge container is probably about 2.5 feet tall, and the root only went down about a foot. So that was surprising. I don't think I've ever dealt with it. It's been in that for so long. Then I took it up the hill and I planted the major part of it. And actually, I thought of you right next to that hellebore that you burgled from my garden last spring.
I still have the video of that. That's got to be the funniest video
That's pretty
ever.
funny. I actually still have that video too. Instagram did not rob me of that. Anyway, it's sitting right up there by the fence, but I was able to break off a couple of pieces like you suggested, and then I put them in the bowling alley, which is probably a warmer winter spot. We'll see if they ended up getting enough roots. But, as in all these things, it's an experiment. Death is an option.
Now, hang on. So you're saying you transplanted it for it to overwinter in the ground, and you think that's a good idea in fall because
Well, I wanted the pot. I bought an osmanthus of Goshiki,
you shallow creature.
just like those roots.
So I'm gonna register a concern,
She takes umbrage. She does that.
and that's that, that's going to be sort of marginally hardy for you, and absolutely could be completely hardy for you, depending on which cultivar it is, what species it is.
No idea.
Let's say it is hardy for you, but it is marginal because you're 7B.
I was thinking when all these leaves fall down, and we'll talk about that in a little while, that I would pile up leaves as if, I would give it some extra mulch. Still concerned?
Well, my experience has been when something is marginal, when there's a plant that's marginal, shrub, perennial, what have you, like it should cope. The best thing you can do for it to make sure that it is hardy for you is to plant it in the spring, not the fall.
Huh.
When I say the spring, I do mean late winter getting into spring, depending on what that's looking like for you. So that it has a long season to establish, and you're paying attention to it, obviously, doting on it, watering it.
Goading. Mm.
Yeah, and so that the roots aren't having to sort of figure themselves out in a new spot.
Okay, so I counter with this. How about warm, incredibly warm because of this ridiculous fall that we've had, warm
Right.
soil versus cold soil?
Oh no, I mean fall's a great time for planting. Don't get me wrong. I think fall is the season to plant. It's when I want to do most of my planting. But if I've got a zone marginal plant for me,
Hmm.
I usually will keep it in the pot that it's in. I think Brugmansia, I'd probably just bring it into the garage because it's a no-brainer. It's going to be fine in there.
Mm.
But with like, let's say, something that is super precious that might not be so happy, I would probably keep it in a pot, not mess with the roots and just pile mulch over the top of the pot, and just sort of stay in a holding pattern. And then in the spring, give it the planting and the teasing of the roots and the all the fun and get it going in the spring. My thoughts. They are not
And
like
you didn't know that I had gone and bought myself this cutest little Goshiki osmanthus.
I didn't, and I love that plant.
Yeah, I
So
love that plant. Oh my gosh, you listeners, if you don't know that one, that's a woody evergreen shrub. When you look at the leaves, you're like, wait, is that a holly? But no, it's not. And it has these beautiful flowers that smell so good. And Goshiki is a cultivar that a variegation that the leaves are kind of creamy, pinky, bronzy, and then green, right?
it is, and it is, I believe, I'm not talking out my hat now, that it is a cultivar introduced from Brookside Gardens, which is a wonderful public garden that's only about an hour from me in Wheaton, Maryland.
Cool.
It's a public park, except it's sort of a botanical garden, and it's free. It's one of the best things about Wheaton, Maryland. That and the library that has used book sale in the basement.
Good to
So
know. Good to
you can
know.
do both at one time. But Goshiki is wonderful. It's just a very slow grower.
Yeah, it'll sit there in that little hot area. This is right in front of my garage.
Mhm.
And I'll just put I have plenty of space to put little violas around it and we'll just, try to make that pot look good.
The other thing that Goshiki does is it collects leaves, the leaves that are falling. It holds them all close to its heart, and it's very tough to deal with. So, what are you doing with your leaves, Leslie? This leave the leaves.
Well,
Can we go into this? The leave the leaves or don't leave the leaves? What are you
I
doing?
am a leave the leaves girl. And I know that there are arguments against it. When I was first a new gardener well, probably 100 years or so ago. And there was no interweb, and I got my information from books at the library that I was too cheap to buy. They said in those books that you should have a very tidy garden every winter because of objectionable pathogens that might rest in the leaves that you didn't clean out. And so I had a very tidy garden for the first 100 years or so. I think we've all learned that maybe those things aren't so bad and they're actually good habitat for insects, which is a nice thing. And depending on your aesthetic, I don't want piles of leaves by my front door. No, thank you. I want some spaces that are quite, oh, somebody's gardened here and look at that fresh, lovely mulch, possibly put on top of leaves that I don't have to look at. But in general, I like to leave the leaves, and I must train my guys here at the HOA to stay away, sirs, from my garden so that I can keep my cute little leaves. And that is where I stand. Where do you stand?
You have guys you can train?
No, well, hablo español muy bien y ellos hablan.
I'm going to not touch that. I'm going to leave that right where it fell and
Pues
move
son
quickly.
hispanos, son trabajadores,
Just
son muy
moving
fuertes estos hombres.
quickly on.
Okay.
I would love some people to train. I am, boy, I'm not all over the place. I see so many different aspects for this. It's one of those things that get to know your garden because it's going to be different in different areas of your garden, in
Exactly.
my opinion. And to just say leave the leaves is, again, a reductionist way of gardening,
Hmm.
which I disagree with because it's, obviously you cannot leave the leaves on a lawn if you have a
Yeah.
lawn, and a lot of people do.
Inconvenient on patio furniture also.
Inconvenient on patio furniture, very true, unless you put it all away like a good little girl for the season. I love to see paths cleaned of leaves.
Mm.
I think it's sort of like
It's more inviting.
it's like vacuuming a little bit, although
Yeah.
it's been a while since I vacuumed. Um, I often feel like having a garden in the fall is like having a 3-year-old. It's constantly throwing things on the ground. You're constantly picking up after it, and you clean everything tidy, and then it's back on the ground again. And I'm also very aware of just saying that's going to piss a huge amount of people off, or sorry, is going to annoy a lot of people. You can cut that later because they immediately, oh, well, I don't want my garden tidy. And obviously, you have that stick up your, as we discussed last time. But that's not what I'm talking about. A very small amount of tidying can actually give you a sense of showcasing
Yeah.
your garden, right? Your paths are tidy. If your paths are swept of leaves or blown of leaves, all of a sudden you're looking at the beds, not
Right.
the leaves in front of you. And
And
yet,
you're invited visually to walk down that path just a little better, I think.
in a cultivated garden space. Now, today I'm on my walk, I'm on the towpath. For those stalkers out there, for I'm between mile. No, I'm sorry.
I'm wearing a my hair is in a bun.
Wearing a nice pink lingerie. Anyway, I'm on the path, and the beauty of that leaf-strewn path is
Oh yeah.
so inviting with the trees around it. It's inviting me to walk along it, and yet it's covered in leaves because it's a completely different space.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that is in our human brains, but in a garden it's harder because things are falling down. You've got branches laden with berries, which I trust we will talk about today.
If you insist.
You've got some of your perennials are flopping, some are standing, some are doing other things, and then your turf probably doesn't look that great if you've got turf paths.
Hmm.
So just taking the time to rake up those leaves on the path, suddenly you're showcasing, oh, that's right, I have beds over here and I have beds here, and that's what I'm supposed to be looking at. So there's that. I like to keep a fair amount of leaves in the beds where I'm not too worried about
Objectionable pathogens,
objectionable pet.
whatever the hell those are.
I get that to a certain extent. I don't know about it in terms of the leaf litter or the leaf mold, but I get it in terms of things like if I'm seeing southern blight nodules, the little sclerotia, the little mustard seeds in the soil, and they're, up at the top there after destroying the ajuga or the hellebores, cleaning up those dead hellebore leaves. Yeah, I would like to do that. I would like to remove those, but just the leaves themselves, I can't believe that because my goodness, my woodlands around me
Right.
have such rich soil,
Right.
and that comes from a lot of leaves coming down. So it depends on what you're wanting out there,
I
right?
know that there was a complaint from one of your colleagues,
It might have been Elizabeth Licata.
Elizabeth Licata, and she's definitely not a leave the leaves girl. And one of her complaints I found so easy to counter in my head. I'm like, okay, I like to know all of the story. Why doesn't she like it? And one of her arguments was that it's going to cover up some cute little bulbs that she has, some winter ephemerals, some small things. And I'm like, okay, that's easy to fix because as you, I like to fiddle around, maybe not as much as you. I like to fiddle around in the winter, but back in my old garden, that was one of my things. All fall long, I had blown my paths kind of clear so I could see where I was walking. And now I have a particularly thick layer of leaves right at the edges of all those paths. And so it was like, okay, these are going to go either into my compost pile, deeper into that bed, but I don't want, I just want a smattering right on the edge where I know I have some beautiful spring bulbs coming. Easy to fix, but whatever.
Yeah, and you may actually, Leslie, have read that from me too, because there are areas of perennials, particularly hellebore bulb pairings,
Mm.
where in November and December, I may have left the leaves in those spots, but I'm pulling them out. because
Hmm.
I've got emerging bulbs coming up and I don't want to be pulling leaves up around that show and breaking emerging bulbs because we've got many successive layers of bulbs coming up around the hellebores. And I want to trim a few of the blackened hellebore leaves.
Hmm.
So again, it's every bed is different, every
Hmm.
garden is different, and just saying leave the leaves is it's not going to work for a lot of people in some areas, and it's going to work for other people in other areas.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a great excuse for people who don't want to do anything. And fine, I'm not judging you, totally judging you.
It's difficult sometimes with with oak leaves that seem to be made of, I don't know, Amazon boxes falling down. They just take forever to decompose. But I love the leaves off of a wonderful Japanese maple, or the biggest tree I have in my yard right now is a crepe myrtle, which has delicate little leaves that, actually they fall down. And I'm like, and that's a beautiful layer. I mean, that's pretty. What else is like that? The willow oak, lovely size leaves, and they break up so easily and they look so, I don't know, uniformly sort of intentional when they fall. Whereas if you have a mix, or if your neighbor's huge oak tree is blowing things over that you didn't quite plan for, that's different. I think you're right. Everybody should plan as they want to, and choose to see what they want to see.
My big baddie is the sycamores that I have here, which
Oh,
I absolutely adore. And this is sycamore in the American sense of the word, not in the British sense of the word. I adore my sycamores, and they're gorgeous in the winter, but these massive leaves smother everything, and they're tough, and they're constant. So I don't really do very much until everything has fallen.
yeah.
Every once in a while, I have a wild hair to clean up a path just to make me feel a little better. I did it just the other day in the vegetable garden, which is all about geometry and order and fun. But do as you wish with that, and enjoy them as some really good, rich leaf mold,
Yes.
leaf compost. It's so good. And
If you leave them, they do feed the soil. And or you could bag them, or you could compost them, or you could, I used to put them in a plastic garbage bag and use a string trimmer to sort of break them down. And
Mhm.
so they actually really looked like intentional mulch then,
You
but
put a string trimmer into a bag.
into a plastic garbage can. Sorry, did I say bag? I meant to say can.
Seriously, really?
Yes, I would do that. Yeah.
So let's just look at all the microplastics you were creating in that scenario, shall we? Not just the plastic that you're hitting off of the side of the walls of the plastic can, but
Yeah.
also the plastic from the rotating
Yeah.
thread going around and around and around.
Yeah.
And basically, you are an ecological disaster, my darling.
I know. I know. Well, when I say used to, I did it, I think, one winter. So I hope I haven't gone over my share of microplastics, but who knows?
I don't even know if I can be friends with you now.
I wear contact lenses. That ship has sailed. All right. So I have a new section of the podcast. This is a complete surprise to Mary. Her eyebrows are way up to her head.
Oh man. Wait,
I got a surprise for you.
wait. Before you do that,
Yeah.
I just forgot about the most important thing that I wanted to say before we started this whole podcast. The thing
What?
that made me feel like I listened to the last podcast we did, which was so much fun.
It was.
And to my horror, at the very end, I'm telling people, please get this wonderful book by Dr. Ross Payton and get the Gardener's Botanical and learn your Latin. It's so important, blah, 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 because you'll make connections like anthro means flower. And I'm like, what? What did you just say, Marianne? I mean, seriously, Leslie, my official degree is in archaeology. You think I don't know what anthro means?
Uh, what does it mean?
I'm It means man, it
Oh,
means
right.
human, right?
Anthropology. Oh, yeah, that's a good
Yeah, and
connection. So what's flower?
I meant anthos.
And
Anthos, the Greek anthos. But once it's there, it's out there. And then you just have to sit there in this 2 week sort of
I'm embarrassed.
limbo of feeling like I'm an idiot and I can't wait until somebody just brings it up
Did it
because
make you
that
feel
came out of my
better
mouth.
that I didn't realize that you had made that mistake? I didn't catch it at all. I edited the thing. I didn't. Did it make you feel better? And she's going to say no because you're you and I'm me.
Well, it does make me realize how fascinatingly different this podcast experience is to writing. Because as a writer, if you're lucky, you've got a good editor, but even if you don't have an editor, you're going back over something a few times and you go, "Oh my goodness, I did not mean formerly. I meant formally." And that's those type of things. But you don't get that chance when you're speaking sort of live.
Yeah, sort of
And
live. Well, I do edit this, listeners. I do edit it. So all the times that Marianne has dropped the F-bomb, like sort of every other sentence,
you're
I
so
edit.
full of Oh
All
God.
right, so here we go. Here's the new section.
All
It's
right.
called, and we can do this every once in a while. It's called "What Would I Do Without You?" That's the name of it. I was gonna call it "What I Would Do Without You," but that sounded aggressive, and because I'm totally springing this on you, I'm like, no, no, I want it to be sweet. Like, what would I do without you? It's so the rules of the game are that I get to talk for 2 to 3 minutes, and you do too. You can do a what would I do without you?
Mhm.
Anytime you want. I get to talk for 2 to 3 minutes about a garden subject that you don't know about. I have not told you, but I am talking without being interrupted. It is a speech. It is a monologue, and you will have a chance to respond to any and all information for the purposes of counterpoint clarity, or simply tell me that I'm wrong. But you got to say why. But you do that after and during your only play. The only thing you can do, well, you can have two things. You can sip on your cocktail and you can roll your eyes. And if you do it loudly enough, oh, she's got her pencil ready. If you roll your eyes loudly enough, they will hear you.
Okay, first off, have you been watching the debates? Is that what this is about?
Point counterpoint.
And are they going to
I just
cut your
thought
mic or cut my mic?
I'm the editor.
Okay.
My topic on this podcast episode, what would I do without you, Marianne, is peonies. And the reason I wanted to talk about peonies is that I have 6 new ones. And I am so excited. So, a few fun facts about peonies, listeners. The American Peony Society, yes, there is one, probably for every plant, defines 6 different types of herbaceous peonies. Now, there are Ito peonies, which are a mix of herbaceous being, dying down completely in the winter, and then the tree peonies, which are, woody things. The Itos are somewhere in between. But the herbaceous have 6 different types, and I was not tracking that, and I'll just run through those quickly. The single peony is the one that has that unfortunate look of a fried egg that you probably will never be able to unsee now if it's white with the yellow stamens. The Japanese type, I don't understand that. It's something about abortive stamens, so dull, but it looked like a fried egg to me also. Anemone, well, oh, she really wants to respond. Write it down, sweetie. Wait your turn. The anemone like is cool. You can see that when you look at a picture and it's got these flat petals on the outside, and then we're getting fluffy on the inside. So it looks like a very excited fried egg, actually. Then there's the balm, and that is a ball of fluff, very pretty, no stamens in sight. The semi-double or the stamens are back, but there are lots of pretty petals around. The full double is probably the most popular, and that is all I bought. A collection of 6 pink, and this will make her crazy, 6 pink full double peonies. And it looks suspiciously like a bomb to me, those full doubles. But anyway, I am planting mine. Marianne, you would be interested to know. This is a new garden, listeners. I really just started about 14 months ago. I have this retaining wall, and at the top of it, I put 16 arborescens, 4 different types, hydrangeas, kind of to dringle over that wall. I also put bulbs between those hydrangeas, but in front of those, so they'll bloom after the bulbs, but they'll sort of flop over the wall more, are these 6 different double pink, Marianne, peonies. And here's the list. I got Raspberry Sunday, which I think everybody can picture. It's very popular. Eden's Perfume, which is apparently the smelliest. Put that near the bedroom window. With great hopes. Koningen Wilhelmina, that's the name. Moonstone, something called Pink Hawaiian. And my favorite, the big party, Festiva Maxima, which is actually not pink, it's white, and it has these deep pink, like almost little just striations of little bits of color. The one that I'm not so sure of is Pink Hawaiian, but that's probably the only one that Marianne would like because it is coral, kind of deep pink. So I put that, I don't think I want to look at that next spring, so I put that down in a different place so neighbors can look at it. When you go to plant peonies, you want to plant them very shallowly, with the eyes being only 1 or 2 inches below the level of the soil. If you dig deeper than that, they will grow, but they will not flower very well. They like to be close to the sun. If you already have peonies and you want to divide them, now is a very good time. First of all, because their foliage probably looks pretty tatty. And secondly, because your soil is warm and it's a great time to divide things. It's not easy if it's an established clump. Peonies, herbaceous peonies, and probably the Ito type, who knows, and maybe the trees can live for 50 to 100 years. And that root ball, if you want to get into it, you are going to need, we'll just make sure that you know that that's going to be your workout for the day, because that is a big one. So that's it. What would I do without you, Marianne? Now you're going to tell me what I would do without you.
Yeah, you obviously, you obviously said it all. I don't really need to add anything at all.
Oh, oh, come on.
Seriously, though, you do need to add a beautiful Japanese peony, obovata, which is now japonica.
Oh, I forgot about that. And I grow that.
You do. Okay.
I do. I was a very bad girl, and when I put my house on the market, I had 6 of those. I could only find 4 of them. But I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. These people won't know what this is. I'm taking it with me. And I grew them and they all came back. So in other words, I dug them up in August of 2023. I planted them immediately thereafter here at this new spot, and I got 2 or 3 flowers from things that have been kind of rudely moved. I love that. Obovata is a woodland peony that will flower in shade, right?
It flowers in shade, but what is spectacular about it, besides those just lovely, pure, single white blossoms, are the seed heads. Obovata is not, it maybe means ovary. I don't know. I mean, it's basically those ovaries opening up, basically. And it's red and black. I don't know. It's just so cool.
And it does itself
And
so,
it
or
does self-sow. But the interesting thing about peony seeds is that they take a few years for you to see the germination, because that first year, if they are actually viable, they will put down their radicle, but you're not seeing anything up above. And then that second year, you're getting a very, very small little hello there. And then from there you can go. So it actually can take about 3 years for you to get a flower off of a peony seed,
Mhm.
and which isn't horrendous, but it's
Oh,
hard for peony breeders
oh yeah.
who are trying to figure out new varieties. When I was at Scott Berline's house, I took some seeds off of his japonica and scattered them around his garden, and he says they're just starting to come up. I was sort of doing a Miss Wilmot's ghost with that one. Um, so when it comes to peonies, actually, it was funny because I was just thinking about them today. I have some that have very strong foliage. A lot of people cut the foliage back in the summer around here because it's a martyr to mildew, and they just cut it down to the ground, and I completely understand that. But I have some that is very, very strong, and these are my own sort of cultivars because they've just sort of self-seeded themselves. They're all singles, most of them. I've brought in 1 or 2 singles that weren't here before I came, and the foliage is turning a beautiful yellow right now. It's
Oh wow.
striking. And I thought, now that's interesting because I don't really think of peonies that way, but I was really on the hunt, knowing we were going to talk today about perennials and foliage and things, and thinking, gosh, peonies, yeah. I don't think most people are going to think about that because they probably cut them back. So if you do have them in a place where they're doing really well and they're not mildewing, it's worth it to keep them. I grow singles.
You grow fried
I
eggs?
know they're not as I know they're not as smelly as your beautiful doubles, and I agree there is nothing quite so wonderful as a big smelly noseful of a peony in a peony bouquet, but I love the fact I don't have to stake them. And
Ah,
it's very rarely that I have to sort of push them up and throw a stake in there and give it a little wrap. It's so rare with the singles.
so when I ran my business, there was quite a lot of time and effort that went into staking peonies, and a variety of clients. From one extreme, there was a woman who, like, if one flopped, she was upset and calling. She didn't stay my client forever, but lots of twine, lots of stakes, 2 gardeners to hold it up and get it right. And then there was another who had a whole row of peonies, and because it was labor intensive and therefore expensive, I would always check with new clients and say, now, would you, shall we stake the peonies? Because you're going to notice that on your bill. And she said, now, why would I stake the peonies? And I said, well, they kind of flop if it rains or whatever. And she goes, all I do is cut the peonies and bring them inside. And I'm like,
Uh,
you have solved the problem.
yeah, it's a, they're, I mean, they're a fantastic cut flower. And I'm sure that's why Martha Stewart grew, goodness knows, and probably still does grow some insane amount, like dahlias in rows for cut flowers for the house.
And just so listeners know, if you're new to gardening, just like daffodils, just like, gosh, almost anything, peony season is going to happen, and you'll notice a bunch of them in your neighborhood, and it's going to be for herbaceous peonies, probably late May or June, depending on where you are. But there are early peonies, there are middle peonies, there are late peonies. So you can have an extended season if you do grow a variety.
Absolutely. That's super important. Oh, and by the way, you are correct. I thought you were just being a bit of a
A bit of a what?
a little
A bit of
snide,
a what?
but I think I do like that pink Hawaiian coral. I'm looking at it in the AHS encyclopedia, and it is a beauty.
Is it like the color of your shirt right now?
No, because the color of my shirt is more pink pink, which is surprising for me, I know. But unfortunately, I found that at this time in my life, this is a good color for me. And we've got to do all we can do to just keep it going a little longer. So, so I'm wearing pink now, Leslie. That is my life. I'm wearing pinks, but only the right kind of pinks. I like to call them ice pinks, not pastel pinks. Hot pinks, maybe. So I like this new segment. This is fabulous. I thought you were going to do something completely different, and I think that that's a great idea because a lot of times we just assume people know what you're talking about with basic groups of plants. And my hope for moving forward in this podcast is that you're sort of, I don't know why I would think we would attract younger listeners. But
Oh, because
here's
we're
the
grandmother
okay,
figures.
exactly. Technically could have grandkids, I just don't.
I don't think
Um,
my 7-year-old grandchild is listening to a
no.
podcast at this stage.
But, throughout my life, I have been so fortunate to have women 10, 20, 30 years older than me that I have just spent my whole life going, I want to be like you. I want to approach life the way you do. I want to look at things that way. And and all of a sudden you turn around and you go, "Oh, geez. I'm wait a minute. Hold on a
I've
minute.
arrived.
What's
Here I
happened?
am.
Where am I?" So I would love to help younger women who are struggling with some of the things you got to struggle with nowadays to find some level of balance and find some level of laughter and joy in it. And I'm not talking about hashtag best life ever or hashtag so much joy or all of that. I'm talking about real, honest to goodness joy in what we're doing. You cannot beat experience. You just can't. Anyway, you can edit all that out. My hopes and dreams to be a mentor to others if they want to be, be mentored.
Is it time for me to pour my second drink?
Yes, absolutely. I've already topped up my gin. Maybe we could segue awkwardly into berries in the garden because Leslie, I gather that you are not a fan from the way that you, well, basically dismissed me saying, let's talk about berries next time in the
I'm not,
garden.
I'm not very enthusiastic. Gotta tell you.
Oh God, no.
So you should say you must enlighten us. Please proceed.
So no, actually, I don't want to proceed first. Rather, I would like to interrogate you for why you feel like you're meh on the berry thing.
I don't know. They're kind of small. You gotta go over and
Oh
have a
my God.
look.
Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. I gotta compose myself.
Got really bad eyesight. I'm very old. Have I told you?
They're kind of small. Alrighty, so um, I'm just thinking how to deal with that. First off, I'm not talking about edible berries. We're clear on that, right?
Well, I think we established last time that we need to not lose our houses. Don't be eating anything in the garden unless you know that it's arugula that you grew or something.
Oh man, my arugula is off the charts wonderful
Is
right
it so
now.
good?
Oh, second crop of the season. Loving it. loving
Love
it.
arugula. Of course, I love to go to the market and buy somebody else's grown arugula, but I love arugula.
You know,
And that's not a big taste difference, is there? I mean, it's not like tomatoes. Speaking of tomatoes, oh, can I just tell you
wait, where are we
that
now?
keep your eye on the berries. Don't lose that thought.
Okay, good.
However, when I'm up on the wall planting the peonies, I turn around and not only do I have my second mouthful of delicious cherry tomatoes, because listeners, I do kitchen compost and I do this bokashi compost. We'll talk about it another time. Tomato seeds got to the slop in my compost pile, which I heaved up over that wall and sort of threw against the hillside. And I have this beautiful tomato and a pumpkin. Okay, now we can talk about berries,
Yeah, whatever about cherry tomatoes. They're kind of small.
but I can find them.
All right, so I do actually have something profound to say about cherry tomatoes, which I have never done before, and I'm so glad to be introduced to it. And that is freezing every freaking cherry tomato that's coming out of my garden is getting washed and just thrown into Ziploc bags right now.
Okay.
And that is because I was introduced to this fantastic recipe by your friend and mine, Andrea Gasper, when I was visiting her in Grand Rapids. And she got it from a website, which I will credit somewhere in the show notes.
Oh yeah, those donuts.
I know for this wonderful sort of little parcels, zucchini noodles with cheese and meat in them, but they're sitting on a bed of burst cherry tomatoes that are first roasted
Ooh,
in you just throw some cherry tomatoes and some garlic and some
olive oil, please, salt and pepper. I mean, you could eat rubber bands with all those other
you
things.
could and it's true and you put that into the oven and then later you take them out and put the stuff on them and all of a sudden I was like, well, wait a minute, I could freeze all of these and then I can just throw them on the bottom of a pan, roast them, and put pretty much anything on it during the winter. They could go into stews. They could, because they were just so good. So I tried it because I was always thinking, well, the skins will be tougher and it won't be good. Yeah, no, it was great. And so this year I was trialing a sort of cherry-sized, a mid-sized tomato called Sunset Torch, which was probably about 2 inches. It's a yellow tomato from AAS, the All America Selections winners. And it was perfect for this. I could just pick, throw them into the freezer, and now I have a freezer full for stew. Anyway, it's a great way to try using your cherry tomatoes because we're always overwhelmed by them, right?
I mean, I only have that one plant. And it was totally accidental. So I've had two good mouthfuls, and that. So I'm not in the freezer department, but for those of you who really grow, that's a great thing to do with them.
I think there's something very cool about freezing your vegetables because they still seem to come out with a certain level of freshness that reminds you of your summer garden and gets you excited about starting seeds and beginning your garden for the next season. And normally I blanch vegetables. I'll blanch beans, I'll blanch broccoli. I never have enough broccoli to blanch, but blanching is putting them into hot boiling water for a minute and it kills a few of the enzymes in them and then you put them into cold water and then they're ready to freeze and they are brighter and better that way. But the tomatoes, they were great and I'm a believer, baby.
All right.
But back to berries, which are not too small. I don't think I would want to do autumn without berries in my garden. I mean, I would feel like something was very, very missing in my garden if I did not have berries because berries are autumn. Berries, I know, okay, leaves are autumn. I
Yeah.
know you're
Yeah.
just about to say that.
Pumpkin spice, baby. That's autumn.
Okay, pumpkins. But to me, the ripening berries going into these deep reds, these purples, oranges, yellows, even.
You got to name some names.
Okay, let's start naming some names. Well, I'll tell you some of the berries that are growing in my garden and we'll go from there. One of the strongest memories I have of my childhood garden was a pyracantha growing up my parents' chimney in California, and we used to take huge, not panicles, what are they? Trusses of berries?
Was it espalier?
It wasn't a spalliate, it was just sort of climbing up and pyracantha are very rigid.
Brutal plants.
and very woody. And
They
so,
have thorns that could go all the way through your foot.
yes, they do. Well, yeah, but don't be a wimp, I say.
Don't be a wimp.
Don't
By
be
the
a
way,
wimp.
listeners, if you just heard a funny sound, that was me pouring my old drink into my new drink. This is the garden mixer. Proceed.
Just, I'm Marianne Wilburn, and this is the Garden Mixer.
Leslie's into her second. Cheers.
So one of the first things when we moved out here that I wanted to plant was a pyracantha for the same reason. I wanted those big trusses of berries on Thanksgiving tables. And so I have a Mojave, that's the cultivar that I grow. I think it's Pyracantha cassinus. I'm not sure. I have my book right here, and this is
There's your book.
the book. What do you think this book is? Could you guess?
Oh, what's that guy?
Durr.
Sir
Durr,
Michael
baby, Durr.
Durr.
Okay, it's time, listeners. I'm Marianne Wilburn, and this is a book moment.
I'm Leslie Harrison. I have a phone in my pocket. Proceed, Marianne.
This is Durr's Hardy Trees and Shrubs and book. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff you can find on the internet, and you can get little tiny bits of information. But you want to get a deep dive into something, you want to go to the source of people who know these plants, love these plants, work with all these plants. Dr. Michael Durr is a renowned authority on this. His book has gone through many editions. Get the latest one, I would say. If you can only find a earlier one, then that's fine. Mine's quite early.
The University of Atlanta or Georgia or
Oh,
something down
Georgia,
there.
Athens,
Yeah.
Georgia. Yeah,
Mhm.
he and Alan Armitage were the two little rock stars. Two little rock stars. How condescending was that? Two wonderful rock stars down there. And Dr. Durr now works with Bailey's to do, they're doing a lot of their introductions of woodies. He is a woody authority. Anyway, Pyracantha, and it is coccinia, an orange berry. It likes dry, it likes heat. It is great for, a south-facing wall in our climate in where I am in Virginia. I'm really on the edge with this guy. Now I have other Pyracantha species that don't berry with that kind of gusto. I have the cultivar silver lining, which I absolutely adore as a woody shrub in my border. So
What's the one that I have, that variegated one that
yes,
you
it's silver
identified?
lining.
Oh, okay. But I'm not seeing any bear. Well, of course, I'm printing the
There's
heck
like
out of it.
one or two.
Okay.
It'll flower, but it doesn't berry like a pyracantha does. A pyracantha is holy criminy. Let me get the Thanksgiving table ready for this huge amount of berries. And they're very orange. Viburnum, so many different kinds of viburnum that you can grow. My favorites are, of course, the ones that I'm going to be told, oh, you shouldn't grow those, but they're not.
Oh, Blue Muffin is a good one. Doesn't that have cute little berries?
What's that?
Blue Muffin.
Blue muffin.
And I used it a ton because it was native. So that made me, gilts, native plants. So that was helping me out. I used it a ton for
What, helping you
clients.
out religiously or just
Yeah, because
okay.
it's a religious.
Okay.
I used it a ton for clients because it was a good looking plant. It was a compact size. It had cute white flowers, cute blueberries in fall. See berries. I was tracking the berries, and it was more deer resistant than many viburnums. Good plant.
Agreed. Viburnum can be a deer candy. And so if you can
Mhm.
just get them to a point where they're woodier and taller than the deer, then you're great. But you really do have to protect them at first. The ones that I grow that I love in the borders are dilatatum. I grow cardinal candy, and cardinal candy is absolutely deep blue red trusses of berries that are outstanding. I love Asian beauty. I suppose I'm not supposed to even say that. I love Asian beauty.
We're all in
Um,
trouble here.
because it just has a delicacy about it that I love. The red is almost a translucent red. I know that doesn't make sense, but I got it accidentally. I thought I was getting a Michael Dodge, and I got this one instead. And it took me a long time to figure out what it was, but I adore it. Cranberry bush viburnum. Now that is a native. That's not opulus. Which one is that? That
And
is,
she's looking.
no, it is opulus.
Oh, good on you.
And I had a friend who grew this, I kid you not, who bought it at Home Depot thinking it was a cranberry plant and then wanted my advice. And she likes flowers and she grows plants. she's not a dullard on this. And she said, I just don't get it because they didn't look like cranberries, but I had cranberries this year. Like, we walked up to it and I went, that's a viburnum, baby. And she was remembering like 25 years ago where any woody that I didn't know, I would just go, I think that's a viburnum.
Oh, that's in the tray. In the tray, that's what you do. You're walking through somebody's yard. Well, there's that and that. Well, we don't know what that is. Well, then it's a
It's
viburnum.
a viburnum. And I did that even without knowing that people did that. It's just a natural thing to do. So she didn't believe me at first, but luckily she'd left the tag on it, which showed her quite clearly that it was a viburnum. But interestingly enough, it said cranberry bush in really big letters, viburnum underneath. And I thought, damn, I hate these marketers. Anyway, viburnum nudum, brandywine, gorgeous. I don't grow this. A friend of mine grows it. I just haven't put one in yet. Big purpley, not purple like Calicarpa purple, but just grapey purple berries.
Listeners, she's moving her fingers in a very artistic way when she.
I am. There's artistry going on there. So that's viburnum. I mean, that's not all viburnum. Some don't berry as well as others. Or they berry okay and the birds love them, but they're not fabulous, like the tormentosum, plicata tormentosum. And that's the Moresia, the ones that the wedding cake type.
Oh yeah, they honestly look like a cornuscusa, do they
A
not?
little
Sometimes
bit, yeah. Or alternifolia, maybe.
alternifolia, but also more flowers, which of course are not flowers, but they're actually bracts than the Florida, the Cornus Florida, the a regular
Right.
native dogwood. Good looking plants, both of them.
Yeah, beautiful looking plants. So there's so many viburnum to just get started with, and I think that Dr. Durr has such a handle on viburnum that I would go deep into his website, into his books, and learn about some of the ones you might want to put in. Remember, they can be big, and pruning can be not difficult. You have to be smart about it, otherwise you could take off your potential for next year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I absolutely adore viburnum. Lindera, spice bush. I mean, they're one of the heralds of spring. It smells good. It goes bright yellow, and you've got these
In fall it
in
does.
fall, and you've got these berries that are actually edible. Ellen Zakos, another book. Hi, I'm Marianne Wilburn. This is another book moment. The Backyard Forager. Ellen Zakos will tell you how to use those berries to make a little sort of bitters for cocktails.
For a cocktail? Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to that. They smell wonderful, but they're very, very red. And then once the leaves are gone, you've got these red berries. Birds love them, so they're not going to hang around a long time. But again, that berry look. What are my other berries? Oh, of course, hollies, winterberry hollies. And for the longest time, because I just sort of thought of hollies in terms of evergreen English or American hollies.
And that classic Christmas card shape of the leaf. There's so much more to it than
There's
that.
so much more. And I thought when I would see a little sprig of a winterberry holly that it was a floral fantasy, that it wasn't real. It took me a while to realize, oh, no, no, no. No, that's just a different species of holly. That's verticillata. And there are so many cultivars of that. One of the things you need to think about when it comes to hollies and when it comes to a few bearing plants is, are they dioecious?
This is sex, listeners. You have to think about
You
sex
do
here.
have to think about sex, even at our advanced age.
Let's not talk about it, but we can think about it.
Is it male? Is it female? And the females obviously are going to have the berries, and you need usually one male for several females. I think up to 10 when it comes to hollies, and they need to be within about a quarter of a mile. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, 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 because I did a couple of big plantings with those a hugely such deer pressure in this property. And I'm like, oh, I'm really struggling for the plants to do. And it was a kind of a layer cake going up this hillside. And yes, I believe that was about, it was 1 to 10 in terms of got to get a boy in here.
Okay, so you can help me with something. And that is the relocation of some winterberry hollies that I have that I really do like, but I've realized that they're just too rangy for where they are, and they need to go into more sunlight, which is on a hillside that I have,
Okay.
which is not protected from deer. And boy, the deer love them.
So this is winterberry hollies that the deer love?
So yes, well they did when they first went in. Yes, they're eating those berries low down.
Oh, darn. Okay.
Once they get high and tall enough, they can't reach them and it's all okay, except for you just need to make sure that the bucks aren't rutting against well, not rutting against, but
The rubbing off the bark. Yep.
yeah. So how did you protect yours in this installation?
Possessive adjective is incorrect. How did I protect theirs? I sent them a bill.
Okay. Okay, you did not protect them.
No, I did. I did recommend. So, yes, deer are going to be far more attracted to, just like we are. Oh, fresh lettuce? That's so much better than brown. Let's have that.
Mhm.
They like that fresh new stuff, fresh new growth. So I did recommend that they protect for the first season or two with deer spray. And so, listeners, if you are a new gardener, when I say spray, it's not anything that's going to be bad for the environment. It's just something, deer have a sense of smell. They do not like the smell of certain things, and you can buy a commercial concoction which can deter them and make them go to some other restaurant instead of yours. Or you can make something if you have a small garden. You take an old fantastic bottle, spray bottle, something Windex bottle, and you put an egg in it. And then you put some cinnamon and cloves so that you're not dying every time you use it, some Tabasco sauce, and you just make your own spray. But commercially made sprays are really good. So that was a long answer to the question, and I would just have them spray it, have a look at them and make sure that they were decently protected in the first year or two.
How'd you get that egg to move through the sprayer?
Oh, I have very strong hands. No, it would get clogged. And this is something, listeners, that you need to do when you're already like covered with dirt and you're like, oh, hey, we got to go to dinner. I need a shower. Oh, now's a good time to run around the garden with this odious smell. Do put cinnamon in there because they don't like that and you like that a little better, but you still will smell very bad. And just run around and your garden will smell pretty bad for about 15, 20 minutes. The next morning you're fine. Your husband will not question your motives and deer will be deterred.
So it's been my experience that the sprays either fall in the clove, cinnamon area or the mint area. And the mint area does better for my deer, meaning
They don't like it as well.
they don't like it as well. And our friend Erin Shannon at Impatient Gardener, she uses deer stopper too, I think. And
Okay.
that is a clove based. And she swore by it. And so I tried it because you want to try and switch them out. Do it one week and do another the next week. And my deer loved that. They didn't love it, but they didn't ignore it like they did the deer out.
There's deer stopper. There's deer scram, which is a very expensive granular. It lasts a lot longer.
Right.
You ever tried that one?
No, I have used the granules from the local, like Milorganite.
Yes.
Our local nursery sells basically granuled human effluents that you throw in your garden. However, thank God I never used that in my vegetables. I used it on my main beds a few times, and it seemed to actually do okay. It's hard to know with my deer pressure, but real concerned about the forever plastics and the hormones in those that are concentrated
Ah,
down in those. And so I stopped using that. I read a story of a farm in Virginia that was trying to grow organic spinach, and they found that they had an enormous amount of this ridiculous forever chemical in the leaves of their spinach. And it turned out that that land had been, the farmer had used this very cheap fertilizer from the local waste treatment plant. And it was very expensive and very terrible and very difficult to remediate. And so I thought,
yeah.
so I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not doing that in my vegetable beds.
Wouldn't Nessa and Mungo get very excited about anything that has to do with dried blood?
I think it's more my raccoons that get excited by that.
Mungo and Nessa, by the way, are Marianne's dogs.
They don't. I think they did. Mungo used to. He doesn't as much anymore. He's getting old.
Mhm.
Not sure what the future's holding for him at the moment, poor boy.
What's the look for Mungo right now? I don't
The
know.
look is scruffy and he sort of looks like a half-shaven man who's sort of in his 70s.
Honey, you missed the spot.
Yeah, he's missed a few spots, and he sort of, when you say, "Hey, let's go," he sort of looks at you with half an eye, thinks, maybe I will. Maybe after lunch. But enough of this terrible topic.
Oh yeah, dear pressure. Yeah, we've gone down that garden path.
Berries. One more berry, which I would be remiss in not talking about, which would be Calicarpa, beauty berry.
Yeah, which is the only one I grew accidentally.
So which one do you grow?
I don't know because this was all inherited. So this is the hillside above the bowling alley, this very steep hillside, and it has self-sown. So it's probably the Asian one, darn it. Self-sown prolifically. So I have been editing it prolifically so that I can have more interesting things up there. I think somewhere up there, there are the Ilex winterberries, also the holly winterberries that we were waxing poetic about very recently. So I need to get better glasses so I can enjoy my berries more. But Calicarpa is that tiny little, what color purple is that? If you've seen it, you're like, oh yeah, I know that plant. It is very memorable. And it is, I mean, birds like it, right? Tell me more.
Yeah, birds do like it. Calicarpa americana, I think, probably has the best berries, the ones that just make you go, whoa. But it also has a very rangy habit. It's not the most attractive shrub.
Hmm.
You can get it in white. Berries are white or purple, and they're clusters that are held in the leaf axils. And it's very striking. It's not so striking during the main growing season. And for people who don't have a huge amount of space, it's a little tough. I should not say, but I really love what's the word? The gracefulness, the form, the habit of one of the Asian species, which is Calicarpa dichotoma. I think it's dichotoma.
Mhm.
And it's because it has just a lovely arching habit. Beautiful berries on it, not in the same exact way. They're held on the tops of the branches, and I really do like that form. It's very, very pretty. I also grow a pearl glam, which is a very interesting one. It has a darker leaf, and it's not been vigorous for me. But that's not to say that it isn't. It just means that where I have planted it, I've had it for about 6 or 7 years. It's not been vigorous.
Where is it?
It's in poor soil. It's right on the edge of the main serpentine bed, and you would have never even noticed it because it wouldn't have been bearing fully at that point.
And
So
also, there's a lot to look out there.
yeah, so you wouldn't have seen that. And I've seen it grown well in other people's gardens. So again, when we grow a plant, if it's not doing well for us, we can't just assume it's because it doesn't do well or it's a bad plant. We need to look at it in other people's gardens and see is it good? And that doesn't mean look at it in the trial gardens necessarily or the marketers' gardens. It means look at it in real people's gardens, people who know what they're doing and see if it's maybe you just got to change spaces, right?
It changed paces and also just never underestimate, the real details of nature that we don't know. And never blame yourself if you can't grow something. What are some easy things that I'm just like, wow, I really am bad at that. Clematis, I can't grow clematis. Now I haven't tried too hard at this new property, but so that gives me hope. I was 0 for 6 at the last property. Did I give myself a hard time about that? Yes, a little bit, tiny bit, because I'm not quite sure what's going on with that soil or whatever. So, I give a plant 3 strikes for sure. I gave that one 6 expensive strikes. Thank God I could buy them at wholesale prices. But you never know. You never know. So don't blame yourself and just keep trying.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of some things where I can blame myself. I can blame myself where I buy too much. I plant too much. Things are crowded, and I'm not being a good steward of my resources because I'm just so excited and I want to grow everything. You can't keep an eye on everything, and things die, and then you've lost the effort that it took. I think that saying don't blame yourself, no, don't get out the cat of nine tails, the albino monk style.
Oh, flagellation.
Yeah, don't like grab the thigh thing that he sort of wenches up on his thigh. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
But I think that it's a good idea to sort of look, okay, what was I doing? What did I not do to contribute to this plant's success? And maybe it's a resounding, I did what I thought it should be, and maybe it's all about where the plant is. And oftentimes it really is. Yeah, I mean, so many people just say, oh, I have a black thumb. Well, here's the thing, it's not magic. I don't have magic coming out of my fingers, and neither do you. And we just pay attention to different things a little more. So if you pay attention to something and you look after it, you're probably not going to have a black thumb. It's probably you just didn't give it the attention that it needed. You mean to say is, I don't like taking care of plants. They die on me, which is perfectly valid.
Exactly. And then go, take a class in bridge,
Bridge, seriously?
mahjong, whatever.
I am so glad I'm here just for the younger crowd.
Uh,
What do people play like together now? I play Scrabble.
I love Scrabble. My daughter-in-law is learning mahjong also. It's not just for old people. It's having a moment.
I'm going to be really inappropriate here. Is there like some sort of sexual reference to Mahjong that I
No, and why did your mind go down that?
don't know?
Where does that come from? I don't even understand.
I don't know. Mahjong, it just sort of sounds like something you do.
It's a tile game that's sort of like gin.
I don't know.
By the way, this is the garden mixer. All right, what else do we need to talk about?
We need to talk about winter annuals.
Okay, briefly.
Yeah, and this is briefly because I really have very little to offer. There aren't that many.
If you have rabbits, don't even try it.
Good point. Why would we do it, Leslie?
Well, because in my case, I like a little color. I'm interested in seeing those late season or very early season pollinators buzzing around. That gives me a little joy. But mostly it's the color, I would suppose, because I'm hurrying in and out because I'm a baby about the cold. Violas, pansies, back in the trade, we call them P's and V's. They do very well. You buy, little cell packs or maybe a 6-inch pot, and they'll grow to, especially the violas, will be about, oh gosh, 8 by 8 inches in the spring, and it's just a million tiny faces looking up at you. So many great colors. If you have rabbits or deer, you could put them close to the house and or in a pot, which is what I've elected to do by my new osmanthus, go shiki. And I am trying snaps again, snapdragons. And that is what do they call that? That's a fascinating botanical name, like antirrhinum or something to do with the nose. Anyway, snaps are fun because they love cold weather also, and they can, depending on where you are. And I am in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I am zone 7B now, and they will bloom a lot of the winter, especially in these times. If you plant them in fall, they'll give you a smattering of blooms. If your fall is warm, they'll get, their roots will grow. In winter, they'll be like, yeah, it's kind of cold. Yeah, I'm just going to hang out. And then early spring, they're like, thank you very much for your patience. And here I am. And then mine actually bloomed all summer, that doesn't make any sense because they don't like heat. But some of them have gotten tired. I just feel like they're a very useful plant, and they give you a lot. I wouldn't plant a garden around them or anything, but just, to give you some spots of color.
Do you cut them back at all?
Yeah, so I'll grab a handful and cut them back. For instance, when I was planting them, they were already a little leggy because I think they were the last ones that were sold as this particular nursery, big ones, Strange's in Richmond, a big old nursery. I'm like, do you not have any snapdragons? And they're like, no, they bought all of those. Wait, under this table in the back of this shed, there are 3 pots. I'm like, I will have them. And they were in terrible shape. So I shared them back and I planted them today. The ones that I planted last fall still exist. They have woody stems, which make me think I'm not going to get any more flowers out of those. Most of them I pulled or cut to the ground. Some of them I'm like, but wait, maybe, I don't know enough about this plant to know whether woody stem means no more flowers or whether a hard cutback will bring on new growth. So TBD.
I'm fascinated by this because I have zero experience with snapdragons. I have never loved them. I've only in the last few years started to think, actually, maybe I need to revisit that because I've seen them in the Ripley Garden down in DC, where Janet Draper does amazing things. And I've seen them at Dixter and thought, wow, these are beautiful. I've thought maybe I should change my bias on these. They always just sort of felt like grandma's
I'm a grandma
flowers.
owning it.
the fact that you can put them in now, again, you're not putting in seedlings, you're putting
Established
in
plants that somebody else grew.
established plants. So they must be short day plants. That they're fine. They don't need those long days to bloom. But I'm a little intrigued. So I'd love to see some pictures on your Instagram of
Oh,
these.
there's nothing to say. They're like brutally mold, tiny plants. But if I ever go back to Instagram, which I've been sadly negligent, I will let you know about that. I would also say that my rabbits will eat them. They just go to them second after the pansies and viola. Because I've removed my pansies and violas, they might go to them first now. That's all I have to offer. So
Okay. Well, I don't do a lot when it comes to winter annuals. In fact, nothing. Um, I used to when I had window boxes at my old house and I didn't have a large garden. I did a lot of pansies and I did ornamental kale. And I also allowed my regular edible kales to sort of do their thing foliage wise. But now it feels like extra effort for me. And if I had a minion or two, I would
where
absolutely.
are those minions?
I
I mean,
don't
you told
know.
me last time you tried Siri. Siri doesn't garden.
She doesn't garden. It's craziest thing. And besides, I'd rather have her make me dinner. But I would maybe put some by my front door, do a little of
Yeah.
that. But it honestly, I'm so frugal with things that it's so tough for me if I haven't raised them myself from seed to buy a flat of pansies for $26. And yet it is exactly what I tell other people when it comes to tropical plants. You're going to get 6 months out of this thing. Enjoy the hell out of it. And it goes to the compost pile. And the thing with the pansies and the violas, and I prefer violas because I love the small, tight faces on them, is that they're going to reseed themselves, most of them.
Especially if you have a gravel path. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a win-win-win. So maybe you go shopping this weekend.
I don't know about shopping.
Okay, well maybe buy some packets of seeds, you frugal person.
I do have some little guys that are starting to emerge that are germinating and flowering 2 inches tall
So cute.
from pansies that I planted in the spring. And so I might go hunting for for the ones that are starting to come up and then put them in the proper place.
Horticulturally speaking, are those two plants perennials and they just hate our summers?
Oh, right. No, I think they're annuals.
You would think with the amount of flowers that they produce, they would be like, and now I'm done here.
They have a life cycle that is done in a year.
And listeners, if
Yeah.
you're new to gardening, there are many plants that we consider to be annuals that are literally perennials, but not for us. But many annuals have that life cycle thing of like, here I am, I'm going to flower, 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 and then I'm going to die because I have flowered so much. It's just like that woman back on the prairie who had 15 children to man the fields, and then she was no more.
Died at 28, but yeah, exactly. You and I, we just keep on going. Putting on hot pink.
Have we talked enough this week? I think we've talked enough.
I think we've hit almost everything. Almost everything. There's one little thing that I wanted to. I think we need to get a guest on here.
Ooh.
I think it's going to have to be Scott because I did promise him, poor dear, and he's feeling a little left out. So,
Scott Berline of the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, who is our pal and also a very funny guy. So we'll get him.
yeah, and then we'll get a real guest after you.
Okay, after that.
I'm going to pay for that.